and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 236, and today's date is December 11th, 2013. And the title of this episode is The U.S.-Iran Deal Has Now Been Exposed. Because what we need to remember is that over the last 30 years, U.S., Israel, Saudi Arabia, and other Middle Eastern countries, and we can't forget about Europe, all the private Western central bank nations have been saying that Iran is 3 to 5 months away from creating a nuclear weapon, and they will use it on the United States, they will use it on Israel, they will use it in Europe, and this never happened. And what we need to remember is that if we go back to 1979, when the overthrow of the puppet regime there, the Shah, from the U.S. government took place, they threw out the private Western central bankers and they removed the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. And ever since that point in time, they've been using the propaganda that Iran is going to use a nuclear weapon. And of course, over 30 years, they've always been 3 to 5 months out, and they've never used anything. And then all of a sudden, the U.S., President Obama, is making a deal with Iran. And now they can have discussions with them. They'll talk about reducing their nuclear weapons and their enrichment program, and everything seems to be fine. And this is a complete illusion. This has nothing to do with their nuclear weapons. It has never been about their nuclear weapons. Just like in Syria, it has nothing to do with their chemical weapons. North Korea, it has nothing to do with their nuclear arsenal. We will get into that as we go through this report. But let's start with the economic collapse news. What we are seeing now in Spain, and we understand Europe is in a recession/depression. I mean, there's no other way at looking at this. They're in a double-digit unemployment. Debt is rising like that can't even be controlled, and every country needs more and more bailouts. And this is what we're seeing right now. And if we look in Spain right now, the country's population is shrinking at an accelerating pace amid soaring unemployment. And what is happening is Spain, the Spaniards in the country are now leaving because there are no jobs in the country, and young professionals, lower qualified workers are going to seek jobs in European countries and other Latin American countries. And the reason for this, and we're going to see this happen quite a bit, we're seeing it in France, we're seeing it in Greece, where people are leaving those countries, because what do people do if they can't find work? They leave and they search out work, and this is what's happening over there. And right now, the number of Spaniards living in severe poverty has doubled to around 3 million since the economic crisis erupted. And this is, I mean, if you look at Europe right now, and you look at Portugal, you look at Spain, you look at Italy, you look at France, you look at the UK, you look at Germany, you look at Cyprus, all these countries are in big trouble. They are in a recession/depression. This is what we saw right before the Great Depression, where the United States, the stock market, was rising to all-time new highs, but the real economic problems were hidden from the public. Most of the people did see some problems where they saw some soup lines. The 10 cities were, hidden away so people couldn't see them at this time, and all eyes were on the stock market. The same thing is happening now. We are seeing a recession/depression and very high unemployment in Europe, but here in America we see the Dow, we see the S&P, we see the NASDAQ hitting all-time new highs, and the entire GDP, inflation, unemployment numbers are completely manipulated to get everyone's attention off of what's really happening in the economy of the United States. And they want you to continually look at the stock market, listen to the propaganda on the mainstream media to let everyone know that we are in a recovery. And to even push this further, you have President Obama sending Biden out there with Democratic leaders to campaign to let everyone know everything's recovering. Obama's out there during the summer saying we're in a huge recovery. We see unemployment going down from 7.3 to 7%. The Fed is talking about tapering that because the economy is recovering. And this is a lot of recovery talk thrown in our face to make us believe that everything is going to be okay. But it's not going to be. And the last time we saw this type of problem back in 2008, California, Vegas, all got hit with a real estate market collapse. And what we're seeing right now in Vegas is that Las Vegas housing demand has crashed while supply is surging. And again, the last time we saw this, the housing bubble popped, the Las Vegas market completely crumbled and imploded on itself. And right now, the Las Vegas housing demand has crashed. For the past 2 years, it has not recovered, but has merely had its fourth dead cat bounce on the back of implicit bank subsidy of foreclosure stuffing, money laundering by all cash foreign buyers, using the NARS anti-money laundering exemption loophole, private equity zero cost of credit to REO to rent programs, and now it is completely falling apart. Supply is surging in Vegas with about a 7th-month supply on hand right now. And we're seeing the same thing with the automobile market, where the automobile manufacturers are channel stuffing and shoving their manufactured automobiles onto the dealers' lots, and they have about 76 days of inventory on their lots. And in retail, we are seeing the same thing, where the manufacturers are pushing their manufactured goods into these stores, and these stores are holding a lot of inventory, hoping to sell all of this during the Christmas season. But what we are seeing right now is that retail is not doing well. There is lower income. The real unemployment is between 24 and 30%, depending on which calculation you go with, and there is a huge amount of underemployed people. So it is quite impossible to pull this off. And the only way to take attention away from all of this is to make everyone look at the stock market. And that is what they're doing right now. And if we look at the Vegas numbers right now, November existing sales are 32% from peak summer. They are down 32%. This is the lowest sales volume since January 2009. So if we look at this, we can see that we were repeating what happened in 2008, but this time it's worse because the Fed is creating money at $85 billion a month. Probably it's a lot more according to other sources, and we can see that mortgage companies are closing. They're laying off thousands of people from their mortgage departments. Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, Citibank, they're all laying off people. 1-800 East Coast Mortgages completely closed and let everyone go. And if real estate is truly doing better, you would expand the mortgage departments. Now, yesterday, they said the Volcker rule was voted in by the Fed, and they're all for it, and it really doesn't do anything. The banks have to self-regulate themselves. Pretty much they got everything they wanted, and according to Open Secrets, these banks kind of pushed for this rule, and they actually paid money to get this passed, and the American Bankers Association paid about $6.5 million, J.P. Morgan $4 million, Wells Fargo $4.4 million, Citigroup $4 million, Independent Community Bankers of America $3.5 million, Bank of America $2 million. So when you hear the Fed, the president out there saying these rules are going to help the people, you know they are definitely not going to help anyone except the banks, the Fed, and that is it. Now, Obamacare has supposedly signed up around 7 million by March. That's what they wanted it to be, and they have only reached 365,000. And we have to wonder why that no one's signing up. forget about the website right now and the problems they're having there. Why would anyone want to sign up to Obamacare with 200 to 400% higher premiums, with deductibles that are in the thousands of dollars, uh, with businesses cutting hours and dropping spouses so they can go on the exchanges? You know, people are being penalized if they don't accept Obamacare. So if you go on Obamacare website and you exit out, you're set up for a penalty automatically. And government officials are exempt from applying to Obamacare. The president hasn't even signed up for his own Affordable Health Care Act program. So why would the people want this? It makes no sense whatsoever. And the reason why these people aren't signing up is because, I hate to say it, nobody wants this. It's too expensive. This is why they had to exempt the staffers in the government. That's why Reid exempted his employees there in the government. And this is why you didn't have Congress, the president, his administration, all in front of the TV cameras signing up for Obamacare. Because if it was that great, this is what they would have done. Now, the NSA is using Google cookies to track targets. And what they do is a unique code created by Pref Cookies can identify individual browsers. The National Security Agency has been accused of using Google cookies to pinpoint targets the government wants to hack. And the NSA and the GCHQ in the UK have been using the tracking files to identify potential targets who are using the internet, according to the documents, as well as listing visits to websites. The cookies can identify an individual's communications. They can identify where you're going, what sites you visited, who you emailed, who you contacted, and they are tracking potential targets. But the thing is, who are these potential targets? They never let us know who the actual targets are. I can tell you who they are. It's you, and you. You are the targets, and this is why they are using this. Now, we understand that the Ukraine looked at the EU, it looked at Russia's proposal, and they saw EU and they saw the European nations completely in debt. They saw that most of them have huge unemployment, huge amount of debt. The people are suffering, and they decided, you know what, maybe the EU is not for us. So they decided to go with the Russian plan. And what happened was riots broke out, and of course Putin is saying that these are spurred by the West, and I would say the central bankers, because they didn't go along with the EU. And what is happening right now is that the European Union has made a call to the Ukraine government saying, listen, we're going to help you out. We know you're in debt, and the Ukraine government is roughly around 20 billion euros in debt, and they need some help. And the EU came out and said, listen, we'll give you $20 billion, just like we gave Greece and Cyprus and all the other countries, and look how well they're doing. And right now, the Prime Minister is accepted the call, is reviewing that, but we also have to remember the Ukraine also shook hands with China to get $8 billion to help out with their problem, with the $20 billion debt that they're in, and they are still making more deals with China. And right now, if the Ukraine doesn't go with the EU deal, the U.S. says, listen, if you're not going to accept the private Western central banks, we're going to impose sanctions on you, because either you do what we say or we are going to take more drastic steps. You think these are riots, just wait, and we are going to impose sanctions on you until you fold and give us what we want. And this is how they play, and this is what's happening here. And again, we see this all over. I mean, Singapore, who made the deal to merge the the stock market between China and Singapore to make the yuan more acceptable as a financial tool across the world, all of a sudden had riots. And there hasn't been riots since 1969. And all of a sudden, because of this, there were riots. There was a false flag attack in Kenya at the same time when the Chinese were making a deal with Kenya to be the clearinghouse of the yuan. And we can see this goes on and on. In Egypt, there were riots. In Syria, there's a revolution. Iraq, Lebanon, Libya, anywhere the central bankers need to put in a private Western central bank and use the US dollar as a natural resource and use the US dollar as the reserve currency of the country, they will start or create a revolution until the country is taken over, a puppet regime is put in, and they are doing what they say. And if they can't do that, they create riots, they make it very hard for the government, and they try to create some type of revolution so the government has been completely taken over and the central bank can move in. And this is how they work. And Russia and China, North Korea, all these without the private Western central bank, they understand how these people maneuver, they understand what their goal is, and they can see the writing on the wall. And right now, Russia is modernizing and building its defense in response to modern threats. And what they mean by this is the Russian Federation responding to developing and current threats to its security and attempts by the West to shift the global strategic military balance in its favor, with the U.S. NATO missiles defense shield being cited as one of the key threats faced by Russia in maintaining a strategic balance, and one for which against which measures are being taken. And right now, we understand that from Poland all the way down to Romania, there is the NATO U.S. missile defense shield, which is really put up, as they say, to protect against Iran and their nuclear program. And now, since they're in peace deals with Iran, Russia wants to know why they still want the missile shield. Well, the missile shield played two roles. It was to set up a shield and to surround Russia and protect the European nations from when war breaks out, and it was also being used for Iran. And right now, plans by U.S. NATO to expand its missile defense plans in Europe have not stopped and continue unabated. Hence, Russia is forced to respond. And respond they are. President Putin said that the West is attempting to bring about a shift in the strategic balance. There are ongoing attempts to violate, blur the strategic balance. First of all, they are related, of course, with plans to build a U.S. missile defense against Russia, and we will take action. And this is what President Putin is saying. And a senior government minister warned Wednesday that Russia would retaliate with a nuclear strike if a new U.S. military strategy threatened its security. So they're giving warnings and saying, listen, if you start something, this is not going to end up with just us shooting bullets at each other. This will end up with us striking with a nuclear attack, and you'll be striking with a nuclear attack, and we will have a World War III nuclear war. And this is what they're trying to avoid. But again, the central bankers will continually push until they get what they want. And right now, Japan is getting prepared for the eventual war. And what they're doing, the Japanese government on Wednesday said the country should boost its defense capabilities and be willing to be more militarily active abroad. The draft of a new national security strategy urged fostering a tighter military relationship with the United States and improving Japan's missile defense capabilities. They need more missiles. They need a shield that is more capable and can handle the threat from North Korea and China. And this is what they're moving forward with. And we also have to understand that Japan right now has in place their secrecy law. They've built the first warships since World War II, and they are preparing and having many, many drills on landing on islands, and they are practicing with the U.S. and having many drills because they're getting ready for war. And this is why all this is coming about. Now, the U.S. just suspended non-lethal assistance into northern Syria. The United States has suspended all non-lethal assistance into northern Syria after Islamist rebel forces seized armed depots belonging to the opposition Free Syrian Army. And because of the current situation, the United States has suspended deliveries of non-lethal assistance into northern Syria at this time. Now, there is a report saying that the Internet, the way it is today, is going to be completely different in 2014. What they're saying, and this is coming from, who's this coming from? From Kaspersky, saying that the Internet as a global network may disappear in 2014, giving way to dozens of national webs with limited access to foreign web resources. So far, only China has a closed national web operated by domestic servers, but a number of countries, Russia among them, have either passed or are preparing laws restricting the use of foreign servers. And we can see that each country might start, having and limiting the amount of foreign servers and a very controlled individual internet in each country, not allowing people to cross over and to go into other countries. Now, NATO has launched a cyber attack exercise. NATO has launched a series of exercises to prepare and deal with potential cyber attacks. At NATO Supreme Headquarters, Allied Powers, Europe, analysts say attacks on the alliance defense systems are growing in number and sophistication. Article 5 of the NATO treaty says an attack on one member is considered as an attack on the whole alliance. It means that a country plotting a strike on one NATO member could be subjected to collective action by all 28 members. And we have to remember what the administration in the U.S. has said. A cyber attack on the United States is an act of war, and NATO is saying the same thing. Now, President Obama is seeking help from Podestas, who is a expert at executive orders, and he's helping the president to give him more powers using executive orders. And some of these things that they're looking at right now is to partner, and this is through executive orders, partner with private sector in healthcare payment reform. And let me just go back here. The person is a senior progressive strategist and former chief of staff for President Bill Clinton, who specialized in the use of executive authority to bypass Congress, is reportedly joining the White House, and that is Podestas. That's his name. And this is his paper recommends to Obama what they're going to try to do. Partner with private sector in healthcare payment reform, focus on healthcare prevention and implementing the Affordable Care Act, replace costly inhumane immigration detention policies with equally effective measures, launch an educational productivity initiative to help school districts spend every dollar wisely to best prepare our children for the 21st century. We could say that is Common Core. And again, he's looking to override Congress with immigration, and this is why he's trying to use the executive orders here. Rebalance Afghanistan strategy with greater emphasis on political and diplomatic progress. Promote domestic revenue generation in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Appoint a special envoy for the Horn of Africa and the Southwest Arabia Peninsula region. Pursue dual-track policy on Iran. And we can see what's happening now. He doesn't want to deal with Congress, so he has this specialist coming in who is an authority on executive orders, and he wants him to teach him and find loopholes and ways that he can create all these executive orders so he does not have to deal with Congress whatsoever, and he can just dictate what he wants. And this is the move he is making. And we all understand why he is moving and pushing this forward. Now, we understand the U.S.-Iran deal. We understand what they were talking about, and we understand there was a secret meeting with Obama and other key players that need to remain secret. But what's happening right now, Congress is raising some questions about these secret talks. And lawmakers are raising questions about the secret U.S. diplomacy with Iran that led to last month's nuclear breakthrough, demanding greater transparency and expressing disappointment and being left in the dark. On November 24th, the November 24th deal among world powers and Iran resulted from a series of secret meetings between U.S. and Iranian officials. He said the talks only heated up after Iran's moderate president Hassan Rouhani took office in August. We then had an accelerated pace of discussions bilaterally with Iranians, and right now the lawmakers in Congress want to know how this came about. It makes no sense because all this time they were, saying that Iran is 3 to 5 months away from creating this nuclear weapon, and what is the reason that all of a sudden they let down their guard? I mean, really, if you think about it, it makes no sense whatsoever. It doesn't even. There's no reason to it. So, the Iranian president who was in power before was replaced with the new President Rouhani, and then all of a sudden new talks came about. Seems kind of odd, and it doesn't seem like something is sitting correctly with this entire discussion about nuclear weapons. And like I've said before, this has absolutely nothing to do with Iran's nuclear weapon program. What it has to do with is the central banks, and it always comes back to the central banks. Now, the Obama administration nuclear negotiations with Iran indicates the preliminary 6-month agreement is as much about global economics as it is about Iran developing nuclear weapons. Tehran's move to free its central bank from direct government control and to resume working with the international banking authorities may have prompted the U.S. to ease sanctions. So what they're looking to do is to give the control of the banks from the government over to the IMF, the central bankers. Now, the record of the past 2 months suggests Iran, in exchange for relief from the increasingly erroneous economic sanctions, will agree to abandon its government-controlled Iranian central bank. Iran's central bank was determined to use the euro to price and settle Iranian oil transactions in favor of establishing a privately managed Iranian bank conforming to the World Bank and the Bank of International Settlements, or BIS. Now, they were using the euro, and the central bankers said, no, you have to use the US dollar to price your oil. And they decided not to, and this is why the sanctions were imposed on Iran. So, Iran reverses course on international banking. On September 27th, Reuters reported that Iran had resumed making loan payments to the World Bank. Even though Tehran had suspended the repayments in July, and the World Bank had not included Iran in World Bank lending since 2005. Iran moved central bank toward independence. A little more than 2 weeks later, on October 14th, Bloomberg reported Iran's government-controlled central bank would be granted more independence after Rouhani agreed to separate monetary and fiscal policies. Bankers working with Iran's central bank would be given the authority to set interest rates independently of Iran's government, separate from any intervention exercised by the government officials in charge of determining fiscal policy. So the central bankers are moving into Iran and making decisions on their banking. While the decision still retains government control over Iran's central bank, Iran's Money and Credit Council, headed by the central bank chief, will be responsible for administering Iran's monetary policy, including interest rate setting. Reuters noted the move was interpreted as a sign Rouhani intended to fundamentally change course from government-controlled monetary policy as determined under Iran's previous president. Next, the IMF decided to visit Iran on October 29th through November 7th with a mission to review economic developments in that country. And then finally, on November 24th, the P5+1, with the blessing of the Obama administration, announced in Geneva a deal had been reached with Iran to reduce sanctions. So what has happened here? This new president seems to be under the influence of the private Western central banks, and now he is making the move to let the central banks back into Iran. And the next phase would be having the oil sold using the US dollar. All presidents before this resisted this. And this is why there has always been the talk of war with Iran. And now, since the IMF, the central bankers, are allowed into Iran and are taking bits and pieces of control of the central bank of Iran, we can see what is happening. But the Revolutionary Guard chief, Jafari, says the country's administrative system has been infected by Western doctrine. The Revolutionary Guard sees what is happening, that the Western powers are now infiltrating the central bank, and they have infiltrated the central bank, and now Iran is losing control and will now need to bow down to the private Western central bank. And the commander of the Iran's Revolutionary Guard forces has said that his country has been influenced by the West in an apparent criticism of the government of Hassan Rouhani, the country's recently elected moderate president. The main threat to the revolution is in the political arena, and the guards cannot remain silent in the face of that, he said. And they're saying that they see what is happening. This has nothing to do with nuclear talks. This has everything to do with the central bankers moving into Iran, and we can see that they are trying to take over. Rouhani has either been bought out, paid, or has been put in there and been corrupted by the Western Central Powers to go along with this deal. And this is the only reason why these talks are happening right now. And the 6 months that they've given them is to see how they react. Are they letting us into the central bank? Can we take over? And if they do let us in, the central bankers will eventually want more. They will want then to put the US dollar as the reserve currency, because this is all they wanted from the beginning. And they are using this backdoor approach. They are moving into Iran, and this is what they're trying to do. And this is why the president has said to Congress, if you impose sanctions at this time, the only alternative we have is a military strike on Iran to force them on the US dollar. And we have to remember, most of the Congress have no clue what is really going on. They're in the dark. They have no idea about the central bank. They have no idea how this works. All they see is what they're told, and they're not told that much. And how do we know that this has nothing to do with their nuclear program or anything else? Well, we understand that Iran now has a ballistic missile, and they're going to do some tests with the ballistic missile, and the White House says that the Iranian ballistic missile test would not invalidate a recently signed nuclear accord meant to temporarily halt some of Iran's most controversial nuclear work. That it's okay now. You can use your ballistic missile. We know you were never ever going to use nuclear weapons on the U.S. or any other country. You haven't even started a war in 200 years. All of this was propaganda. So we know that you're not going to do anything because you're letting the central bankers in, and eventually they're going to try to push and get their way and eventually have the US dollar as the reserve currency, because that's what they wanted from the beginning. They wanted this for 30 years. Syria, on the other hand, is a different story at this point. They are still not using the US dollar as the reserve currency. Syria is still a problem. And this is why they want Assad out right now. Maybe they can replace him like they did with Iran and get a puppet government official in there to do what they want. But again, we're going to have to see how this plays out. But we can see what is actually going on here. We can see this is the real deal. It has nothing to do with nuclear weapons whatsoever, just like Syria had nothing to do with chemical weapons. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.